And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird from Awesemo.com. Dan Stratford, Dave Lockren along with you on this Monday morning, getting you ready for an 8-game NBA slate as we sit in the afterglow of Week 15 of the NFL. More like, after, bomb. What is it? It was a bad week for me, Luffy. But nonetheless, we are here for some NBA. How was your NBA? How's your NFL Week 15?
Not bad, man. Not bad. Everything was all right. Nothing crazy, of course, but not bad. I'm still waiting on it though. It's still yet to be seen because the Eagles Rams game still going. I got a lot from that since I was playing in the Yahoo $1 million one.
Yeah, I'm over there as well, just looking to eke out some cash there, which would be nice. Did not take anyone from this game, though, so just sitting there watching my 0 PMR as the night goes on. Let's dive into this NBA slate. We'll give you, as always, our preliminary look. Dave has your deep dive Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's over at Awesemo.com. If you're not yet a member, you can use the promo code EARLYBIRD to get you 1 week for free. That's everything behind the paywall. Or you can also take a stab at winning our contest, which is by commenting on this video on YouTube, subscribing, liking, all of those great things. And then over on iTunes, doing the same. You can subscribe to the podcast, like it, give it a rating, and then leave a comment. And the comment can be pretty much about anything, but be sure to leave one on this episode. I'll come up with a question by midway through. So by the time we hit small forward, I'll give you a question to answer if you can't think of a comment yourself. So, Dave, as we often do here, looking through, trying to find the injuries that may influence this slate, doesn't seem to be a whole lot at the top end. I know that we have potential of Damian Lillard being out. He was out of practice on Sunday for personal reasons, so something to track there, whether or not they announce he won't be playing. Zach LaVine is, I believe, out against the OKC Thunder here. Any other names that are at least on your radar as potential influencing on this slate?
Not as much. I mean, we've seen a whole lot of injuries recently. I think both of us have talked about how this feels more like March basketball than it does like late December, still 2018 basketball. But I don't know. It's kind of strange. Now you got no Levine. Chris Dunn was nice to see. Came in, started that game. Got some good minutes and had a very solid outing. He's gonna be a guy that we're gonna continue to play until Zach LaVine gets back. There's no question about it. Even against OKC, I'm not totally off of him. He played 36 minutes last game, and he's still priced at a pretty decent level, right? But outside of that, no, not a lot of injuries. Like you got Kyle Anderson, questionable, Iman Shumpert, Mitchell Robinson, Kelly Oubre, and Austin Rivers in that trade, Damian Dotson, but nobody else. That's pretty much it, man.
All right, let's dive in then. Crazy to read about the Brooks issue with the trade from Friday. Just the wrong Brooks was included or the wrong Brooks was said to be included.
Unbelievable. How incompetent.
And how about being Marshawn Brooks in that? Like, oh, no. That's not the Brooks we wanted. That's not who we discussed. That's like when the other twin shows up for the date on a bad teen sitcom. And you go, oh, no, this isn't the one that was supposed to be here. Anyway.
So strange.
Let's dive in. Obviously, point guard deep, as always, on DraftKings FanDuel. You have a little bit more picking to do, playing to as well, but you get a good look here by going through DK of just where we have some good matchups. And you have Russ against Chicago, which has its upside. Harden gets Utah. We talked about Utah at length last week. About their defense not being nearly as good against guards as they have been in the past. Some numbers may be a little misleading, though. Harden struggled last time out against the Utah Jazz, if you're someone who takes game-by-game results as an indicator of any sort. Then you have Curry against Memphis. Ben Simmons, Damian Lillard, we mentioned as potentially out here, has a great matchup with the Clippers. And then Conley in a pace-up spot against the Golden State Warriors, and we can move through Booker and Bledsoe and Fox and McCollum and all of those. What do you got here? Who are some of your favorite plays at the top end of point guard?
Yeah, I mentioned Chris Dunn, not top end, but just to get him out of the way early. Look, it's not an easy matchup. This could devolve into a blowout, but I do still think you're talking about a guy that's going to see a lot of work, right? 19 shots last game, 36 minutes, 24 points, really solid outing. And Chris Dunn's not a bad player. I mean, when he's healthy, and a lot of people have probably forgotten what Chris Dunn can do, but when healthy, he's a pretty good player. So I have no issues with that. I'll tell you what, though, man, Russell Westbrook, it's been a struggle lately. You're still getting the 50-plus fantasy points in each of his last two, but holy hell, man, the shooting has been bad, Dan. And 4 for 18, 8 for 16 was all right, but he finished with 47 fantasy points, and most of that came in the last quarter of the game. 5 for 15, 4 for 17 on the last one, and his shooting's just been dismal. And it's hard for me not to think, all right, well, I got to keep running him out there, at least in some capacity. I have to keep playing a little bit of Westbrook, and I think it makes sense to do it on a night where Harden faces Utah. Look, I don't think Utah defensively is that stout. No, but it is a slower paced game, and I'll still have some Harden, of course. But again, it's a spot where he could let you down. Giannis Antetokounmpo coming off that huge game. Hopefully, everyone got a lot of him, especially after the Middleton and Brogdon news. He crushed Cleveland, absolutely destroyed them. But he's facing a Detroit team that defensively has been pretty stout this year, and has actually given Giannis some trouble in the past, particularly in the rebounding department. And Jimmy Butler's back. The Sixers are on the second of a back-to-back against San Antonio on the road. So, yeah, I think Westbrook is in a spot where you can go back to him here. As tough as it's been. Oh, and Curry and Durant face Memphis, the slowest team in the league with a stout defense. Not to say all these guys aren't capable of having big games. Point being that from a matchup standpoint, Westbrook still has the best matchup here, Dan. And I'm still going to go back to him because I don't think – actually, I know for a fact, unless there's an injury we don't know about, that he's not going to keep shooting 25%. Right? It's only logical to think, all right, Russell Westbrook is going to turn it around. He's going to right the ship, and I absolutely think he will. So that is one guy that I'm going to have quite a bit of. Damian Lillard against the Clippers is an interesting one. This should be a high-scoring game, and that's one thing I like a lot about it. Only 219 total, but I actually think this goes well above that. And you're getting Damian Lillard at 8,800 on DraftKings, a really, really friendly price point. So those are the two guys there. But at the top, obviously we can get to Harden at shooting guard. Curry's spot isn't great. Can he have a big game against Memphis? Sure. But it's a spot that I don't love. It's a very, very paced down spot. Memphis does play good defense. Mike Conley's very respectable on the defensive end. So yeah, I'm not huge on him. That's why I mentioned a guy like Chris Dunn at 6,200 because he makes plenty of sense here. I even think somebody like Jeff Teague is viable if you're looking to get away from some popular guys. Teague's playing 30-plus minutes in competitive games. The Timberwolves have kind of come back down to earth lately. They're 8-point favorites, but a 231.5 total, the highest on the slate. So I got some love for Teague here as well. And it's pretty much it. I mean, we'll get into some more when I write the deep dive today, but it's not the deepest position. You'd think we'd have more with 8 games and point guard usually being one of the deepest positions on the slate.
I don't have the Warriors shots attempted pulled up, but the Grizzlies allowing just 81 shots to opponents per game on the year. Now, obviously, we have fast-paced team versus one of the slowest-paced teams. Rubber meets the road somewhere in the middle. But going to be interesting to see how many shots the Warriors do get up against the Grizzlies here in this matchup. And a good point there about Curry. Just the volume may not be there at 10K or 9,900 to really pay off that price point. Now, obviously, he can go 9 of 10 from three-point range and make it all worthwhile, but does seem like a spot to pass over Steph Curry in that matchup. Mid-tier, you already talked about Chris Dunn. You have Moutier coming off a gigantic game. Jeff Teague has been fine. I mean, he hasn't been great, but he's been sort of middle tier and done just enough to remain at least somewhat cash viable, depending on the minutes he's getting. Rubio, Schroeder, Reggie Jackson, D'Anthony Melton is down here, 5,200 against the Knicks. Any mid-tier or cheap guys outside of Chris Dunn on your radar?
Not really. If you wanted to take a flyer on somebody like, I don't know, Patrick Beverly, who's seen his minutes trend back upwards, you can, but it's pretty ugly, right? And you're pretty much looking at guys like Derek White, and that doesn't feel good. His minutes are really all over the place. You can't rely on him to get good run, even though he's cheap. Bryn Forbes is another one of these guys where he's all over the map, and I'm just not big on him. So, no, I don't think it's one that you can feel really confident about. I guess Ryan Arcidiacono, just because he played 39 minutes with Levine out. But at the same time, he's not a guy I'm supremely confident in. It's against OKC. So yeah, if I'm going cheap, it would probably be him just because we don't have Zach LaVine. But it's not like you're getting him at a bare minimum salary. Maybe if Kyle Anderson's out, you could possibly make a case for like uh, probably no one, honestly. Maybe Shelvin Mack. But I'd have to look back and see if Anderson's really getting any minutes at the guard positions right now, or how many, because that's not something I've looked at recently.
All right, let's roll on to shooting.
One more, Dan. I'm sorry.
Sure.
One
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
This is someone I've been talking about a lot lately, and I feel like he continuously goes overlooked. Dennis Schroeder's had 2 really bad games over his last 2, but he had been very good before that. Even since Westbrook returned, he had looked very good. He's 5,600 on DraftKings. That's still too cheap for a guy with a 26% usage rate. That's since Westbrook returned, right? And a guy that's still playing 30-plus minutes in a lot of these close games and is still getting up. Look at his field goal attempts, 14, 17, 18, 13, 14. When you're on a team with just Westbrook and Paul George, you're still going to get a lot of work. So you'll see the assists go down with Westbrook healthy, but I still think Schroeder's too cheap and has way too much upside in tournaments to ignore at a mid 5K price point against Chicago, and you get a little bit of blowout run potentially if they happen to go up early on Chicago.
All right, let's tackle shooting guard next. And obviously, you touched on Harden a bit. We've touched on Curry a bit. You have Booker, DeRozan, Bledsoe. LaVine is out. Butler's here at 7,400 with groin intact. Played Sunday, so should see him again on Monday unless they try to rest him for one reason or another. And then you get into the mid-tier, typical guys like Hardaway Jr., Klay Thompson in the mid-6Ks, Andrew Wiggins right in there as well. A position that has some upside, obviously, some talent with MPE, but who do you have as some of your top plays at the position?
All right. Yeah, the no LaVine thing is pretty big, right? I mean, he had just been getting a ridiculous amount of work, like a top 5 usage player in the league. When it comes to Harden, though, I don't mind going back here. Like I said, do I love the matchup? No. I'm not fooled. I mean, I think Utah, as we know, is not the same defense. You've mentioned it a lot. I've mentioned it a lot. Not the same defense that we've seen in the past. Of course not. But in that same breath, it's still not the best matchup. It's still not the greatest spot, but Harden's just been ridiculously good the past couple of games, and we've seen him go on these runs, right? We've seen him go on these filthy runs. I mean, he's got a 50-point triple-double and then a 32-point triple-double over his last 2. The guy is one of the best scorers in the league. When he erupts, there's no stopping him, and when he goes on these runs, it's really tough. And he's still under 11K on DraftKings. So even with Chris Paul in there, James Harden is just such a monster that, yeah, I have interest in him. And like I said, either Westbrook, snaps out of this slump and starts putting up another big game, because I'm going to have some, but I'm also going to hedge with some Harden because he's just been too solid lately, way too dominant to ignore. And as we know, Utah not playing at this crawling pace, not a top 5 pace, but not a crawling pace. And they're also defensively in the backcourt have not been the same team.
Yep, we've talked about it a few times over. You have a pace that is, where are they? Let's see, 106. They are
like 19th or so.
Yeah, not right there, 20, behind the Bulls, and they're giving up the fifth least shots per game at 85.4. But again, I think if people are going to stay away from Harden here because of the matchup, because of the name, I would love to have as much of him as I can, especially cheaper than Westbrook, right? Like saving at least the $300 there could go elsewhere. What else do you have here? What else do you see first glance as we roll through? What names do you at least want people to keep in the player pool here early on?
So Tim Hardaway, we don't necessarily feel great about him either, right? But he's getting a lot of minutes, right? He's played 35-plus minutes in 4 straight games. He's still a 30% usage player, and even he has struggled shooting. When his shooting improves, you're going to get a huge game. Even last year we saw it where he had those monster shooting games out of nowhere. 6,600 is still a very reasonable price for a 30% usage guy in a home matchup against the Phoenix Suns. I mean, everything about this spot screams blow-up game for somebody like for Tim Hardaway. And if Dotson's out, you might even see more minutes from him. Right now you have a 218 total. The Knicks are only 1.5 point favorites, dude. So if this game stays close and Hardaway plays upwards of 40 minutes, you have to really, really like him here. On the other side of that, I don't know what Devin Booker's minutes are going to look like, but this is a good matchup. The Knicks defense has struggled all season long in the backcourt. unless Ntilikina's on him, but that just hurts him so bad offensively that I'm not sure that'll be the case. Booker played 36 minutes in his return. He's a monster usage guy, and he's still reasonably priced. He's not a must play here by any stretch, but I could see this game being one where you stack it and you get good numbers, right? If you were to stack it with like a Cantor, because DeAndre Ayton has struggled so much to stop opposing centers, and a Hardaway, and then Booker on the other side, maybe Warren or something. There are ways to make that work. Absolutely. And I think he's in a very, very favorable spot himself. From a value standpoint, though, you're not going to get a whole lot of value, man, unless you want to roll the dice on a Luke Kennard, and I just don't see that being necessary. It's right now, at least, assuming all the guys that are questionable end up playing, it's pretty ugly. So I will throw out, Schroeder again, like Bogdan Bogdanovic against Minnesota. That game is going to see a lot of scoring. He's sub 6K, so I like that. But nobody that stands out is like a dirt cheap punt, Dan. And I don't think right now, until news, or if news breaks, I don't think we're going to get one.
I rolled with Mr. Kennard last week. It did not turn out well, so I don't know that I'll be going back to that well anytime soon. I have to also admit, Lofty said before we started recording about an Alshon Jeffrey play, and I just got to watch it. And if you haven't watched it,
crazy, right?
Well, the fact that he and Aguilar played defense against each other.
Yes. Is that the strangest thing? There wasn't a single defender around, but that catch was still beautiful.
It was beautiful. Went up to the highest point and brought it down, and Aguilar was the free safety. Like, Aguilar was standing behind him looking for the ball. So if you haven't seen it, it's one of the crazier plays you'll see in the NFL. And I'm sure when Foles looked up, he freaked out a little bit because of how wide open both of them were down the field. So just threw it up and let them go get it. Let's talk small forwards. And you made mention about the trade, obviously. Oubre to Phoenix. You have Ariza to Washington. I'm not sure how much it influences anything happening here, but in case you're looking for one or the other, just a reminder that happened on Saturday. You mentioned Giannis at the top as you're talking about Russ. You have KD here at 9,700. Again, fewer shots here. I get that Memphis will come up and pace a little bit with Golden State, but this is a major pace down game for the Warriors. KD at 9,700. Yeah, Paul George, Ben Simmons, DeRozan. Tobias Harris makes his first appearance here. Gets a matchup with Portland, which seems like a +1 for him at 7,200. Gallinari in the same matchup at 6,600. And then you have some of the MPE guys with Hardaway Jr., Buddy Hield. TJ Warren's eligible here for Phoenix. Giannis is somewhat matchup proof or is matchup proof, but price point obviously is where we come down here. Is 11-3 something you feel like running out there? You said Detroit's a little bit more stout on defense than we might expect. Do you feel comfortable with Giannis, or would you rather save some money here at small forward?
So there are a few things about this matchup that I do not hate for Giannis. First of all, the Pistons do allow the 9th most points in the paint. Giannis leads the league in points in the paint. So that's good, right? Fast break points, Detroit's done a great job of limiting them, but Giannis actually hasn't scored that much in the fast break this year. And then second chance points. This is a Pistons team that is allowing the third fewest. So there's a few spots I don't like and a few spots I do. The opponent points in the paint allowed is a pretty big deal for somebody like Giannis, no question. That's where he does his work. That's where he produces most of his numbers, no doubt. And then in terms of rebounding, the Pistons, despite having that big front court, are middle of the league in rebounds allowed. Offensive rebounding allowed, they are allowing the 7th most, right? But then defensive rebounding, Detroit's allowing the second fewest. Offensive rebounding allowing the second fewest, which is obvious because Drummond's just a monster on the defensive boards. And then defensive rebound, they're allowing the seventh most. So there is definitely a way for Giannis to have a big game here. But it's still not like I don't think there's any way to spin it to make it seem like it's a perfect matchup either. But because it's Giannis, it means that he's in play. Now, Middleton's expected to play. Brogdon's expected to play. So this isn't exactly another spot where you're getting Giannis with 2 of the starters out. But at the same time, I actually do think this game will stay close in Detroit. I think it stays competitive, and Giannis is always in play. I actually have him behind Westbrook on DraftKings. I'm going to take the savings on Westbrook and just hope that everyone's fed up with him because it's a better spot for Westbrook, man. It absolutely is. And the only problem there is the Thunder are huge favorites. So I think when you look at all of the top tier players. Every one of them has at least one. I don't want to say red flag, but there's a caveat with at least one. There's at least one caveat with all of them. So it is what it is, man. You could look down to somebody like Ben Simmons, who I said it at the beginning. He's not going to be hindered by Jimmy Butler. It's not going to happen, because it's not like Ben Simmons is taking 100 shots a game and Butler's going to siphon many of them away from him. No, he just triple-doubled yesterday. In the third quarter, he triple-doubled with Jimmy Butler healthy and playing his full allotment of minutes. I think Ben Simmons sub 9K is still a very interesting play, and you're not going to get anyone that plays him either.
Any cheap options here? We're ready to move on to power forward.
So I think Durant's price tag is cheap, but I still don't think I'm going here. Tim Hardaway is eligible here. We talked about him. Aside from that, Nemanja Bjelica is a really interesting play. Bjelica is getting good run along with Bogdanovic, and he's getting good run depending on what the matchup, what the game is. I think this is a matchup where you see good minutes from him, especially given that Marvin Bagley is out here, and he's going to be out for at least 10 to 14 days, right? So I'm looking at this spot. Oh, wow. The Eagles just picked off Goff as he tried to throw the ball away. That is a huge, huge interception. Wow, what a play. Oh, God, they're finally flying to the ball. It's the first game all season where the Eagles' defense has looked fantastic. Not that anyone cares, but I do. Bagley's out. Bjelica's minutes should be a little bit more stable here, Dan. And he is a +1 per minute fantasy point per minute guy this year. So I like him here. I think it's a good spot. I like Bogdanovic a little bit more because his minutes have been more consistent, but Bjelica's very, very cheap now. He's $4,400. So that's a good discount that you're getting on him with Bagley out, assuming that Bjelica continues to get a decent amount of run at the 4, which he should.
It's crazy to look at. I'm just trying to track down the Phoenix Suns numbers, as the Knicks have a bunch of guys who could potentially have big games simply because of the way their rotations work. Kevin Knox at 5,700 caught my eye. He's putting up about 15 to 20 shots a game since he's back in the starting lineup. Expected the Suns to be a top 5 pace team, but they're 20th in the NBA. That's nuts.
Yep.
For such a bad team. Or sorry,
Absolutely.
22nd. 22nd.
Yeah. Crazy, right? I was going to mention Knox at power forward since he's there at that's where he's at on FanDuel. But go ahead, man. Yeah, he's taking up he's getting a lot of shots up, playing a lot of minutes. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. It's a bad Knicks team. They're going to see what Knox has. They sort of cast off Ntilikina. I know he had one good game a couple of games back, but they're seeing what Knox has, and he's putting up, 15, 25 shots against Charlotte 4 games back, and that's when he got back into the starting lineup. So there's upside here. There's clearly downside as well. He is not an efficient shooter as of yet, shooting decently well from 3-point range, and obviously cheaper than Hardaway. Would probably be most intrigued to see ownership here. And that's something Osmo provides. Osmo.com has ownership projections each and every day. So trying to figure out where you lean, talking GPPs, you want the lower owned player, right? You want the upside from the lower owned player. So if you see Knox is half the ownership of Hardaway Jr., you make that pivot and make that work. So let's roll next to power forward, where Giannis and KD are eligible, Paul George as well. We get Blake Griffin against Milwaukee on the other side. Aldridge, Tobias Harris. LaMarcus Aldridge is just one of those names of late that I don't trust at all. He's been a roller coaster ride over the past couple weeks.
Man. It's been rough.
Had a decent outing. What was it? Last game out, I think, right? 49 DraftKings points at 8K, or 7,900, I should say, which was fine. But again, you're not getting these gigantic outings from him all that regularly. So somebody I don't think I rostered him all season long. You get Lauri Markkanen, Rudy Gay, Draymond is eligible here at 6,700. We get cheap quickly. You mentioned Kevin Knox. You have Harrell at 57. Bob Cove is at 52. Bobby Portis at 5K. So lots of middling potential plays here at power forward that don't have the biggest upside. You do have someone like Jaren Jackson Jr. against Golden State. Maybe he enters into some plans here just from the athleticism and pace perspective. What do you got at power forward?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Markkanen is I'm having trouble deciding what's going on with the minutes here. Like, okay, last game, Markkanen played 37 minutes, right? If you can rely on him to get big minutes like that, I'm all in. Now, Bobby Portis played 19 minutes, 22 the game before that, in which Markkanen did not crack the 30-minute mark. Robin Lopez played, 19 minutes against San Antonio. The game before that, he played 28. And then Jabari Parker, we saw that report that he was going to play in that game, and then he basically wasn't going to play much at all after that. And you know what? They stuck to their guns, right? We saw him play 4 minutes against Orlando, and he played 0 minutes against the Spurs. So being that is the case, and it's kind of crazy. I mean, that experiment has totally failed them. Then I think Markkanen does, continue to see good minutes here, right? I'll break the rotation down more in the deep dive, really get into it and see what we have there. But Wendell Carter Jr. played 18 and 21 minutes. It looks like Jim Boylan isn't nearly as willing as Hoiberg was to just give him minutes no matter what. And that's kind of important for Markkanen. Markkanen needs to be out there getting minutes, and we're seeing that be the case. Obviously, guys like Felicio aren't playing any minutes since Bobby Portis returned. So I think you could still see Markkanen get another 30-plus minutes here, and that's pretty solid. I think he's at a good price point. You're seeing solid enough usage, right? And he's getting up 18, 10, 16, 10, 12, 24, 14 shots. You obviously want him closer to that 18, 24 range, but he's still getting up a lot of looks. There's no question about it, man. So I like Markkanen here. I don't think I'm going to pay $9K for Griffin. There are a lot of quality options on this slate. Griffin's been very solid this year, but I don't think I'm going to go there. And we'll get to Drummond after this, actually. We'll get to Drummond. But I actually do think the matchup is better for Drummond than Griffin, even though I'd rather play the cheaper one of the two, which is Blake. I do think the matchup is better for Griffin. And then for the Marcus Aldridge, I will take some stabs at him in tournaments, but I still think he's too expensive, Dan. Like, I don't think he should be 8K right now. It's a bit rich for my blood. Pop has basically shown, like, look, if a game gets out of hand, unless it's super close, he's not going to be playing him for those huge minutes, and that concerns me. So only in tournaments here, and even in that case, I don't have supreme confidence in him either. Where else here? Guys like Montrezl Harrell, you're seeing the price tag come back down, and a lot of that has to do with his minutes have come down, and that's concerning. I don't think you can go to Harrell right now. I think we have to wait it out to see the rotation shake back out and clear itself up again, because right now it's not clear enough. Taj Gibson's expected back from Minnesota, so the Saric play isn't nearly as exciting as it was the other day when he was a must play. Jeremy Grant, though, I think is a decent play. He's not 3,900 like he was last game, but this is still a good spot. He's been playing 30-plus minutes pretty much every night. If you need the value, he's there. I prefer Bjelica, just to be clear, but I think Jeremy Grant's an okay play. And, you mentioned Markkanen at the top. It's a good spot for Markkanen, and he should continue to get a lot of minutes. Porter should continue to play around 20 or so, and that's what we have. And then the last one that I'll throw out here, you mentioned, Knox I was going to mention here, but you already did, and I agree that I think actually it's not crazy if you wanted to play like Hardaway and Knox in the same lineup, but make sure to run it back with someone from Phoenix.
Yep.
I think it's pretty much one of those spots where both of them could put up decent numbers. I'm not worried about that. And then Tobias Harris, if you want to get him in there, his price has come down to a more palatable spot. He is still one of the safer players in the game, despite a few off games. And I expect this game to stay very close. Like I mentioned, I think it will see enough points. And right now the Clippers are 2.5-point favorites, so I like it.
Yep. I was going to make mention of a TJ Warren or Devin Booker or somebody on the other side for Phoenix, just as a high volume or somebody who's going to get a lot of minutes. Crazy to see the Eagles just decimating this LA Rams team.
Well, the Rams, Smallwood scored, and the Rams just went for a fake punt, threw the ball. This should be challenged because this is they called it a catch, but this ball clearly hit the ground. So there's a very good chance that this gets overturned and the Eagles have the ball in Rams territory, up 30-13 with a second left in the third. Pretty wild, huh?
Yep. It seems defenses
got hurt too.
Defenses have figured them out, though. It seems like the blueprint has been laid down of just letting the run do what it's going to do, not try to beat them by beating the run and making Goff beat you. And he's had some big struggles over the past 3 weeks. So see if McVay can counterpunch over the next couple of weeks and get the Rams right heading into the playoffs. I did promise you a question before small forward. We are now through power forward, so that is my fault. But I'm going to ask you one, always comment whatever you want. But if you need a prompt here. Just let us know when you started playing daily fantasy. Like when did you start? What got you into it? And how long you've been playing for. So let us know there on YouTube. You can let us know on iTunes as well with a comment, along with, as always, if you just want to tell us what your favorite part of the podcast here, whether me and Dave doing pods together or the DFS Early Bird, formerly known as the Night Shift here at awesemo.com. Let's close it out with centers, Dave. Get you off to the fourth quarter of this Eagles-Rams game. You got Joel at 10-16, our buddy, so I first name basis here. Karl Anthony Towns, Andre Drummond, 9,300. And then you get a nice run of centers only. Capella, Gasol, Nurkic is at 7,500. Gobert, DeAndre Ayton sits at 7K flat against a Knicks front court that doesn't really play defense against any centers. Steven Adams gets a matchup with Chicago at 6,900. So, as always, a deep position. You've already touched on a number of these guys throughout. Who are some of your favorite names?
All right. Let me see. Whose ball is it? I think they overturned it. Yep, they overturned that. It's the Eagles' ball, 1st and 10. Wow, that didn't work out, did it, Scott? Did it, Sean McVay? Anyway. Let's finish it out. I don't want to go to Embiid here. I mean, I love the guy. We're buddies too. Don't get me wrong. And really, the Spurs have not been that difficult of a matchup. But second of a back-to-back, Dan. He's a big guy, and you get these centers traveling from game to game. Remember this game, they were in Cleveland. Now they travel to San Antonio. So it's not exactly like from Cleveland to Pittsburgh or something. Not that there's a Pittsburgh team, but you get the point. That's a bit problematic there. He only played 29 minutes, but still. Plus, Jimmy Butler's back. So I'm okay not playing Embiid here. And he's at I don't want to say an elevated price point, but with Butler back, I think we can get him down back below 10K, and that's where we'll really want to play him. I actually prefer Towns here. Towns is, $600 cheaper. He's got a really spectacular matchup. Highest over under on the slate at 231.5. So there's a lot that factors into Towns being a very good play. Can Embiid explode? No doubt, but I don't think I'm going here, especially being that Westbrook's only $300 more expensive. And I still respect Greg Popovich. I still respect the way he can take the best player out of the game, which is why I like Simmons, by the way. I think Simmons can really exploit this matchup against the backcourt of like Derek White and Bryn Forbes and DeMar DeRozan. I think they're going to have a tough time slowing Simmons down, especially when he goes to the basket. A sneaky tournament play if you want to pay for him. He's not that much, but you get the point. I think Towns is a really solid option here, though. And I like Drummond's matchup, but with his price creeping back up, I think you just nut up and go for Towns at a slightly more expensive cost. And Enes Kanter, I mentioned him earlier when we were talking about potentially stacking a game like this. His minutes, again, Dan, we never know what we're going to get from him, but 36 minutes last game. When he gets the run, he is one of the best per minute centers in the league, right? Very similar to Yusuf Nurkic, not in terms of players, but in terms of production and kind of volatile minutes at times, even though Nurkic's have been more consistent than Kanter's. I just really like him here. Even if, and what I also like is he's not super expensive. Even if he plays like 28 minutes, he can still give you 40 plus fantasy points, which just makes him that much more appealing. Yusuf Nurkic against the Clippers is another one. It's a really deep center position. There's a lot of guys that I think stand out as quality plays. Steven Adams is another one. We've seen some big games from Adams lately. He's also the type of guy that can fall off the map, no question. But I like this spot against Chicago. I don't think Wendell Carter or really whoever they put at the 5 is going to be able to hang with him on the boards and around the basket. Not a top play of mine. I prefer Kanter there, especially for the upside. I just think Kanter's ceiling here is huge. And Ayton on the other side, I guess he's an interesting tournament guy, but it's not something I trust. As we talked about, he's lost minute. He's not getting the fourth quarter run in blowouts, even though this isn't expected to be a blowout. That was something that really padded his floor. We're not getting that. And now you've seen him play less than 30 minutes in 7 of his last 8 games. That's not what we were getting earlier in the year. So I just much prefer Kanter over him there. I prefer going up $500 to Yusuf Nurkic, who's just been a staple of consistency. I mean, every time you look at a box score, Yusuf Nurkic is putting up, 35 plus fantasy points. Not to say you'd be happy with 36, but he's just been very consistent. I like this matchup against the Clippers. He's going to stay out there for very long stretches. I know he only played 19 or averaged 19 minutes in those 2 games, but there's no way with the way he's been playing that's the case again. So yeah, just a deep position. A lot of guys that I feel pretty confident about here. And the last one I'll throw out there would be Willie Cauley-Stein. He bounces around. He's definitely been up and down in terms of production, but he's averaging 33 minutes per game in I think 15 games that have been decided by 10 or fewer points this year. So you're getting a lot of minutes from Cauley-Stein in any game where that's competitive. And I mentioned that in the deep dive on Friday. And he ended up playing 33 minutes. Or maybe it was against Minnesota, played 30 minutes, and he had 5 fouls still at 34 fantasy points. 33 minutes and a 5-point loss to Golden State, 44 fantasy points. This game, 8-point spread, but I think the Kings keep it close. And Cauley-Stein is priced nicely enough to where I think you get the consistent run, and he gives you over a fantasy point per minute at $6,400.
All right, as we do here, just want to get your take on the overall guys above 10K. We've touched on all of them. You have Giannis, Russ, Westbrook, Harden, Embiid, Towns, Curry, and Durant just below 10K. But we stick to our theme here, 5 players above 10K. Who is, to say this properly, who is your favorite 5-figure player on DraftKings for Monday's slate?
It's going to be Westbrook right now, man. I just don't see any way that Russell Westbrook is going to continue shooting 25, 30% from the field. I just don't see it. And when he does erupt, Dan, you're talking about a guy that has scored 13 real points in each of his last 2 games with 52 and 55 fantasy points. When he has that 30, 40 real point game, that's when you're getting the 80, 90 fantasy point games. And I cannot overlook him at that price. By the way, I mentioned that he was only $300 more than Embiid. Sorry, he is not. He is a little bit more expensive than that, 11.2, but I'm still on board with Westbrook here.
All right, that's where we'll do it. Find Lofty on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. Find me at Dan Strafford. And of course, it's Awesemo_com for Awesemo.com on Twitter. Leave a comment and a rating and subscribe on iTunes. Do the same over on YouTube. You'll be entered in to win 1 month free of any content you want. That is NFL, NBA, any of the sports, or something free from the shop over at Awesemo.com. And you'll be entered in to win a 1-year fully paid subscription. That's 365 days from the day you get it on Christmas Eve on through next year. One person will be drawn there on Christmas Eve. So with that said, Dave and I wish you the best of luck on Monday. Stay tuned tomorrow. You get Emac and Adam right here on your DFS Early Bird.